Hello, I am 15 and a male. I live in a small rural town in South Washington State. For description reasons, I will describe the town. On the northwest side, where I live, it is close to forested area, and the center, east, and south end of town is very flat and not many trees. The best way to describe it is wheatland. One day, this kid showed up at my house claiming that I told him to come over. He even knew my name. We will call this kid James. James was about 14 and always dressed in a hoodie. James would always come to my house and he would always ask to come inside. I always refused to let him inside my parents' home. I told James that I never wanted to talk to him. Please don't judge me, something in my gut always told me to get rid of him as soon as possible. James did not take this well and stormed out of my backyard. Every day after that, I would see him at the nearest street corner from my home, just staring. I never told my parents, as I felt that they would not help. One day, about 4 or 5 months after telling James that I never wanted to see him ever again, I was walking to the local market. As I am halfway to the market, I spot James walking towards me. To avoid him, I cross the street to the other side. He follows and crosses the street. I see the market just ahead and cross the last street to reach it and jog inside in the right entrance. The layout of the market is that the market is back from the street around half a block. The area in front of the market is the parking lot with 2 rows of parking, and to the side is the small parking lot. If you were to look at it from the street, there's 2 entrances, one on the left and one on the right. The deli is on the right. I order my food, pay, and leave for the left entrance to avoid James. As I leave, James is outside and spots me leaving and immediately follows, but in a light jog. I cross the street on the street over from the first street, adding an extra block to my journey. I have an advantage of about a block and start jogging. Once I see my house, I get my keys out and get inside as fast as I can. James starts banging on the door and windows and yelling things like, "Open up," and "You're going to regret it." A nearby neighbor soon saw the commotion and soon tackled James. I will forever be grateful. James wasn't charged with anything, as the police here don't do anything. Just today, about a month after the incident, I was home alone and hear someone trying to open the screen door in the backyard. I dropped to the floor and slowly peeked around the corner and see James trying to open the door. I call my neighbor and tell him that James is trying to get in. I see my neighbor storm out of his house and starts chewing him out. I decide not to call the police, as they're not going to do anything. I sit in my home typing this with the lights off. I don't know what to do. If anything else comes from this, I will update. It started off on Omegle. I'm an 18-year-old at the moment. Since I turned 13, I developed a habit of talking to strangers online. Every day after coming home from school, I used to talk to the numerous idiots, some decent people, some creeps, but nothing as bad as this. For some backstory, I generally followed a generally similar routine on most days. Mondays through Thursdays, it was go to school, come home, and then just watch a few episodes of Friends or The Middle. On Fridays, I usually went out and chill with my friends. Saturdays was just the day I went to the town center, where there's usually a lot of shops, cinemas, and whatnot. I preferred to go out by myself on this day though. Occasionally I went with friends. I just got home, jumped into the computer, switching on my usual choice of music and just unwinding from the rough day at school. Watched some YouTube videos, a few episodes of Friends, and then after eating, proceeded to go onto Omegle. I came across a decent guy called Chris. Now, Chris and I exchanged messages for around 40 to 50 minutes when I just told him a little bit about myself. Just some general information, nothing specific to be honest. What I like to do and just basically what I wrote up there. He told me he was 18 years old and working at an ICT company as an apprentice. He seemed to have many of the same interests I did, which was a little cool because it gave us a lot to talk about. I casually told him that my web browser was acting up, to which he said, "Hey, I'm great with computers. My job involves working with computers. You should totally download this application and I'll see what I can do." With a huge amount of enthusiasm. Me being as innocent as I was, I agreed. The application he told me to download was either TeamViewer or Splashtop Streamer. The reason I wasn't hesitant was because there wasn't anything on my computer, no personal details, just some schoolwork and video games. It was pretty neat that he could just control my computer. I messaged Chris saying that I'm popping downstairs for 5 minutes and that I'd be right back. I came back within 3 minutes seeing him erasing my web history. This didn't seem sketchy as I had a problem with my browser. I asked him after he was done what he was doing and he said that the problem is all fixed. And it was. I thanked him and we spoke for about 20 more minutes. We planned to speak the following evening with some tags so the system matches together. The next evening, we proceeded to speak. This time, however, he started acting up, asking why I was late, and that I said I was going to come online at 8 p.m. Now, I don't remember the exact time, but I know for a fact I was not even that late, max 15 minutes. I told him not to speak to me like that and why he was acting like a fucking idiot for. He went on saying, "Sorry honey, I hope you can forgive me. I love you." Now, I'm not into guys, and these messages were freaking me out. I told him to stop and he just sent me a few smiley faces. He then went to say, "I know where you live in this town. I know what school you go to," and things of that sort. Our town is a small one, and there wasn't any way that he could just guess that. Things were uneventful for the next few days, until the following Saturday when I went shopping with my friends. We all grabbed something to eat and then sort of just chilled on one of the benches chatting. A man then popped next to us, asking if he could sit down. I was a little apprehensive, but my friend said they're public seats and we shouldn't stop him. He was standing on my friend's side, but when we allowed him to sit, he shifted right next to me. He just sat still there, not moving, not saying a word, but just looking straight. He then turned toward me and smiled. I tried to get up, but he grabbed my shoulder, to which my friend started shouting. He then started shouting himself, directly in my ear, and casually walked away. My friends walked me home that night. It got worse then, when someone started posting blank letters through the letterbox. I was unable to comprehend anything. Random bangs on the door, but when we went out there wasn't anyone there. When I passed my driving test, I got a letter congratulating me. It was typed up. We still get the letters, just not as frequently. The police seem to not believe a single word, but it's supposedly being investigated. Just, please, let's not meet. Edited to fix a few sentences in grammar. I am a 25-year-old female and I've been living with my boyfriend for the last 6 years. This was about 4 years ago. I was online a lot, and still am, and met a lot of cool people. Many had rough backstories, but I always offered a listening ear and try to support them. I'm going to mention that I have autism and can be pretty naive, so I don't recognize certain bad situations right away. I met a 24-year-old guy from Australia, I'm from Europe, who had just broken up with his girlfriend, that he said was emotionally unstable, and it ended with her wanting to kill herself and him not being able to handle it anymore. I talked to him about it a lot and tried to help him cope with the situation. We started a game together online, and I started to see him as a friend. But after a while, I started to notice he was kind of acting like I was his girlfriend. I glanced over it because he knew I had a boyfriend, and it might have just been kindness and I mistook it. I'm famous for being oblivious to that kind of stuff. He started to tell me that I should break up with my boyfriend, going on long tangents and writing me emails how my boyfriend was like his ex-girlfriend, that he abused me mentally and physically, that he was raping me, was making my life a living hell, and that he was going to kill me one day, which was all completely absurd, and I kept explaining that to him. After a while, it was obvious that he indeed thought of me as his new girlfriend. He made it clear we were going to spend the rest of our lives together, and that he would make sure of it. He was convinced that me telling him to stop and leave me alone were all orchestrated by my boyfriend, and I was actually being held hostage. Luckily, he didn't know my full name, or so I thought, or where I lived. I started getting messages from random accounts with pictures of people bloodied up, saying, "This is going to happen," all with his name on the pages itself. This went on for a while. I begged him to stop, but he kept pushing. I had blocked him, but he kept making new accounts to get in contact with me. I decided just to delete my account on that site altogether and not go there anymore, and hoped it would go away. But then I suddenly started to get messages on Facebook. I never told her my full name, and even then, I made sure my Facebook is extremely private with a family nickname, and I only had other family members on there, because most live far away. My boyfriend didn't even have a Facebook account, and like I said before, I kept my full name and location to myself. He made about 150 pages and profiles and completely directed to me with pictures of people killing themselves, telling me he was going to kill himself, complete with the overlays and banners of, "This is your fault." It seemed like he made it his full-time day job to send me messages on different platforms. He even found stuff like my YouTube account and followed me around there. Eventually, he started sending receipts of his school books that he had sold of his current school year, and later, one plane ticket to the airport where I actually lived close to, and 2 back to Australia. He kept sending proof, like of him moving out of his apartment and putting his stuff in storage. He told me he was coming to save me from my boyfriend, who had kept me hostage, and that he was going to kill him and take me back to Australia, so I could be safe. He had gotten rid of all ties he had, quit school, quit his job, so we could have a blank slate, telling me we'd have to live under the radar for a while. All the while, he kept sending me pictures as proof of doing these things, because he loved me and wanted to show it. By now, I had blocked every Facebook account with his, unfortunately extremely common, name, and basically deleted every other online account I had. Even though a lot were under different names, he found me everywhere. Eventually the day came where he was taking pictures at the airport, which he was posting on my Facebook wall, and him on the plane with logos I immediately recognized as my country's official airline. He began talking about the actual house I lived in, which was kind of a strange place to live. I lived on an industrial area in a maintenance apartment inside a huge empty building with only one other office. I was on the lease as a maintenance person, but that was purely for legal reasons, because the owner thought he could make some money on the side. The whole building was open to me, and there weren't any people living remotely or nearby. He definitely couldn't have known I lived there. He started messaging about how perfect the whole setup was for his plans. My boyfriend was aware of everything that had happened by then, and thought it was best if maybe we'd sought out the help of police to give us some advice. But of course they couldn't do anything, and suggested that if we were scared, we'd better just go somewhere else, and we decided to go at my parents'. We went back the next day since we had both school and work, but saw police cars in front of the building. The owner informed us that someone had broken in. This person had tried to get into the office next to our apartment, and they had an alarm system that went off and alerted the cops. At that point, I wanted to know what the hell was going on and if he had tried to break in, since that was our first guess. It wasn't hard contacting him since he had already sent me multiple messages again on Facebook from several different accounts. My boyfriend contacted him, and the guy agreed to have a webcam chat, and when he turned his cam on, I immediately recognized the hallmark of our city from the window behind him. I silently freaked out, not letting known I was present. My boyfriend then spent more than 7 hours talking to him. The guy was furious and still certain my boyfriend was going to kill me, with nothing that could change his mind. After more than 7 hours with my normally monk-calm boyfriend getting pretty annoyed at this point because of the most stupid reasoning, the guy copy and pasted whole chat conversations and spin them in crazy ways. The guy was saying he was disgusted and started to throw out profanities towards him about me. Basically saying that if I was so adamant on staying with him, I deserved what my boyfriend was going to do to me and wouldn't warn me, because I had ruined his, my own, our kids, and our life together. I only heard from him one more time after that. A short video of him being in the hospital saying he tried to kill himself. It was all my fault, and I was going to bring darkness over the earth instead of light. Like you promised. He said stuff like that often, and other weird spiritual promises he said I made. I got scared again for a while, but it got silent after that. Even though it was years ago, I'm still afraid the guy isn't over me and will come after me. But as far as I know, his parents had him locked in a nursing home for the mentally ill. I got this info a year later when his older brother finally responded to my Facebook messages to him telling him to please speak to his brother, because he was not okay. Stupid Facebook spam folder. Mr. Crazy Guy, please, let's not ever meet. So, a little context here. I'm currently 23 years old and now I've moved out of my hometown, but this took place during the winter of my sophomore year of high school. I had grown up shy and pretty nerdy in a little town in Oregon, won't give out the name for privacy's sake, and spent most of my time in the water, whether it be swim team or water polo. It made me a pretty lean, mean short machine, me only being a 5'3" girl. The only thing I loved more than swimming and being in the water was choir. The only thing I hated about choir was Sam. He was a tenor who stood behind me and constantly berated my singing voice, mocking it like I was a dying parrot. Now, I may not have the best voice in the world, but at least I tried. Not only that, but he and his friends liked to pick on me while I was in the hall, making squawking noises wherever I walked past. Our choir director tried to ignore it, but it was hard to stick up for the nerdy soprano. Since I was prone to teasing and mocking, I had a pretty limited number of friends who I could hang out with. One of those people being my friend Katie. Now, Katie was definitely not someone you'd consider to be popular. She was overweight, smelled like fish all the time, and wore the most eccentric outfits you can imagine, including tutus, top hats, and holy high-top Converse. I secretly admired her for her lack of giving fucks, but never really told her because I thought maybe I could someday rise into the ranks of the popular girls. Of course, when she invited me to her birthday party, I didn't say no because it was a costume party. I showed up in my Halloween best, beaming because I knew that I would outshine everyone at the party. This came back to bite me in the ass. There was a guy there named Scott. He was a year ahead of us, creepy as all sin with long, greasy black hair and skin that had never seen a lick of a UV ray. Since he was the only guy at the party, most of the girls ran away giggling and screaming as he chased them around the rented pool hall. I stood by the concession and rolled my eyes at their antics, my party mood going south quickly. It came to Scott's attention that I wasn't joining in on their party antics, so he came over and stood uncomfortably close to me. "Hey," he greeted me, his lip curled over his yellowed teeth. "Are you having a good time?" "Yeah, sure," I squeaked out. Regardless if Scott was weird looking, I rarely had guys talk to me, let alone guys in another grade. He arched an eyebrow. "You're Hannah, right? Katie's told me all about you. You don't have a boyfriend." I shook my head, dreading where this conversation was going. "Nope, I'm too busy," I said, making excuses. That's when a cold, clammy hand slithered around my waist and he tried to pull me into his concave chest. "I could be your boyfriend," he practically whispered into my ear. I couldn't get myself away fast enough. I quickly excused myself from the party, walking outside to fumble with my car keys. I was a new driver and my mom warned me about driving in the icy roads, but I didn't care. I just wanted to sit in my car. The place where Scott put his hands was damp and I shivered as I slid into my driver's seat and cranked the heat. I texted a quick message to Katie telling her I wasn't feeling well and peeled out of the parking lot. A couple weeks went by after our encounter and I did notice I started to see Scott a lot more than usual, whether it would be just outside my classrooms as I left my lessons, or sitting at a table where he didn't normally reside at during the lunch period. Even having the audacity to join me in a group of my choir friends as we sat around joking about class. I tried to brush off his creepy gestures and his semi-stalking tendencies as mere coincidence, until one day, Katie stopped me in the hallway at the end of the day. "Scott likes you. He wants to be your boyfriend." The face I made apparently did nothing to deter her words. "I don't want or need a boyfriend," I responded coolly, slamming my locker and joining the throngs of students as they walked towards their respective modes of transportation. "Look, he seems like a nice guy, but I'm just not interested." "Come on, Hannah, he's super into you," she pleaded. "Plus, then I could live vicariously through you." "No thanks." I waved her off nonchalantly as we stepped out of the double doors, me ignoring the squawky noises that followed me out. Our school parking lot was built out of 3 different lots, one across from the school reserved for those who had big, loud diesel trucks with Confederate flags hanging from their beds, one up the hill, and one down by the baseball and football fields. These were seldom populated since the fastest way to get to them was through the woods behind our school, frequently used by the potheads. I knew beggars couldn't be choosers, so I opted to usually go down to the field, following the path down towards the lower lot. I had just entered the woods when I felt someone's gaze on the back of my head, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I turned around slowly to see Scott walking down the path, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his black jean jacket. My heart leapt to my throat as I turned on my heel and began walking quickly down the hill towards my car, trying to keep from looking back. "Where you going, baby?" His voice oozed through my brain like a frog crushed with a brick as I practically leapt into a sprint. However, with my swimming bag and book bag, I couldn't make it very far until Scott had his hand around my scrawny wrists in a vice-like grip. "You're just gonna play hard to get, aren't you?" "Let me go!" I practically screamed. He merely smiled and practically caressed the side of my cheek. I resisted the urge to vomit in his face. "Nah, baby, I'm done with the games. Come on, say I could be your boyfriend. You're so pretty," he cooed as I closed my eyes and prayed to God that I wasn't going to be raped. That's when my salvation came in the form of an asshole sent from heaven. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Instantly, Scott's hands were off me and I stumbled backwards, my deer in the headlights expression plastered firmly on my face. "Listen, man, my girlfriend was just getting a little playful. I didn't mean anything by it." I flicked my gaze towards my hero, and to my horror, I saw Sam standing there, his own eyes full of hatred and disgust. "No fucking way. I've seen you following her to her classes and sitting with her at lunch. She wants nothing to do with you. Now get the fuck out of here before I kick your ass." Scott didn't need to be told twice, practically jumping back like he had been struck with lightning, pushing past Sam and I to head back to the school. Sam watched him leave before turning to me. "You alright?" "Yeah, just a little flustered," I admitted. "Thank you for that." He shrugged and a small smile crept over his face. "Yeah, of course. We have to watch out for one another, don't we? We're practically family." I scoffed. "Family? You make fun of my singing." He chuckled. "I only make fun of you because I know you can take it. Now come on, I'll walk you back to your car." From that day forward, Sam and I turned over a new leaf. We even tried dating at one point. At the end of the day, we found that we were just too different to be compatible as lovers, and so we went our separate ways. However, I do still keep in touch with Sam since he stayed in our hometown, and he keeps me updated on the local gossip. Scott was recently arrested. For what? I'm not sure. But in the long run, I hope he gets the help he so desperately needed. If Sam hadn't been there that day, I could have been raped. Or even worse. So thank you to the boy I hated for being my guardian angel. So Scott, let's not meet again. Disclaimer. There are things that might trigger in this story, or it just might upset, and I'm so sorry if it does. My stomach curls thinking about it. I'm not sure how to verify this, as this is before internet, and it was never reported to the police. Well, there's one incident with the police report. I'll work on figuring out how to find it. So this story didn't happen to me, but to my mother, who was in high school at the time. This is going to be long. Each and every detail is true, and she never told me the boy's name because reasons later on in the story. Some background. My parents have known each other since my mom was 13 and my dad was 16, but didn't date until she was a freshman and he was a senior. So anyways, my mother is a freshman in high school, and she's at a party where my dad is not because he's at work. So the party is being busted by the police and everyone's panicking trying to run out and not get caught drinking. In the panic, she has no time to call and ask her dad to come pick her up. Mostly because the police are simply forcing people out of the house, and she's afraid to go up to him and ask. There's a tap on her shoulder and she recognizes him, John, from a class she had with him the year before. John asks my mother if she wants a ride, and obviously my mom says no because she doesn't even really know him, besides his name. John apologizes and proceeds to offer the fact that his parents know hers, even offers their names. "Your parents are... and... right?" "Yeah, my parents know them. I'm a few streets from you." Which he really was. So with no time to call her boyfriend or parents to let them know she's coming home, John gives her a ride in his El Camino. They chat and catch up a little. She's a cheerleader now, so it seems he knows more about her than she does about him. She really only knew he was in the wrestling team because her boyfriend, my dad, was on the football team and had seen them at players' assemblies, etc. So, they turn onto her street and she relaxes without realizing how tense she had been the entire 5-minute ride home. "I'm actually right up here on the left," she points out when it seems like he's pulling over 4 houses short from her house. "I know." he said before pulling out a pocket knife, and at knife point forced himself on my mom, 4 houses from her home. She told me she cried and stared at the porch light on her house the entire time. When he had finished, he started the car and pulled up to her house, said that he would miss her, and watched her walk to the door to make sure she got inside. She doesn't tell anyone besides her boyfriend, who was so livid he immediately wants to go to the police. Of course my mom is scared of this guy, so she begs him no, and very reluctantly her boyfriend lets her talk him out of calling the cops. They decide to move past it and hope that's the end of that. Well, she works at a grocery store as a bagger and cart collector, and sure enough, John began to show up at her work, asking to talk to her and asking when they can go out on a date. She says no, she's dating her boyfriend, and to stay away from her. Well, this only pisses him off, and he starts leaving love notes behind on her car of the disturbing and disgusting things he wants to do to her. Eventually they move from notes to dead roses inside of her car on the seat, staying late at night, watching her collect carts, and stalking her at school, and following her home. She can't keep the stalking a secret, so she tells her boyfriend and parents, and, you know, it was different back then, and my grandpa's kind of a badass, so he said he'd take care of it. He goes to the guy's house and threatens him to leave my mom alone. Well, now after that incident, the notes aren't just at work, they're in her locker at school and on her desk before she comes into each class. He's even began to run up her bedroom window, it's at the front of the house, and slam his hand on the window, leaving more notes about the things he wants to do to her, and pictures of her inside her room and at work. Eventually he starts hopping the fence and slamming them on the back door of her house while they're home, while they're gone, all day and night. My mom's physically sick each time there's a new note. Knowing the police in their area are not inclined to pay any mind to stalking situations that have yet to escalate to violence, they try to catch him red-handed. My dad now sits in the parking lot of my mom's work while she collects carts, or works inside to make sure John doesn't show up. Sits outside her house weekends to try and see him leaving notes. This goes on for 6 months before finally, her dad has had enough. He packs a small bag, kisses my mom, her sister, and my grandma goodbye, and tells him he has something to do back home. He's gone for 4 days, and when he returns, no one asks him how his trip was, or what he needed to do back home. The boy has been missing, and lo and behold, 3 weeks later he's found dead, in a landfill 2 states away, shot execution style. So, scary stalker rapist? I'd say let's not meet. But we can't.